So have you heard the expression, the ox is in the mire?
Yes.
All right, so according to the law of Moses, the Jews were required to keep the Sabbath day holy, which meant that they weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath. But if the ox wandered into the mire, they were allowed to pull the ox out, right?
Right.
Well, today, the cows were in the front yard. Same thing? So this morning I got up extra early to do chores before church. I went out, I fed the dogs, I fed the goats, I gave the chickens some scratch, I made sure the cat had food, I went out, gave water to our Dexter, which is currently in isolation. I went out and I moved the broiler chickens, and then I drove out to check on the cows, make sure that they had water and so forth, make sure they were all where they were supposed to be, but they weren't. They weren't in their paddock.
They broke through the fence?
They had broken through some cross fencing that was up. So they were down out in the pasture up towards the front near one of our neighbors. But they were still contained on the farm, so I wasn't too worried. We have good containment fencing around the perimeter of the farm. So I really didn't have time to deal with it right then. I needed to go to church. So I went back, we got ready, drove an hour to church, had a couple of meetings before church, then a meeting after church, and then an hour drive home. So we didn't get home until 3 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, it was at least 2.
It was 3 o'clock, actually. We got home around 3 o'clock. And lo and behold, we drove up to our house. Well, we drove along one of our pastures where I expected the cows to be. They weren't there. And where did we find the cows?
Well, we thought they were in the front pasture in front of our house, but they were actually in our backyard.
They were in our front
yard.
They were in our front yard. For some reason, they had wandered into the front yard of our house. Now, so 2 things went wrong today. First of all, the cross fencing, they were able to get through that, so that's something I'll need to work on. But then, in addition, somebody had left the gate open.
It wasn't me.
Oh yeah, it was me. So I left the gate open yesterday.
Unfortunately, I made sure that you shut the driving gate.
Yeah, so we did have a third line of defense, which is our driveway. We have a gate out on the front driveway, so they at least didn't wander out into the street. But they were in our front yard. So we rushed in, changed our clothes, went out, and with a little bit of teamwork, we kind of herded them out of at least our yard back into the pasture, closed the gate, went back in and had lunch, and then we spent the next couple of hours. How long was it?
Maybe an hour.
Was it an hour? Felt longer. Yeah, it was an hour. So we spent the next hour trying to herd them back into the paddock where they belonged, and then move them over to the next paddock. So that was kind of fun today. Definitely the ox in the mire, the cows in the front yard. So we ended up doing a little bit more work than we had planned for the Sabbath. Usually I try to get everything ready on Saturday, so Sunday is just a quick, checking of water and things like that.
They had fun though. They went up in the barn.
Yeah, so when we came back in, we went up to the barn to feed the dogs and check on all the other animals, and there's a bunch of cow poop up in the barn.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
There's cow hoof prints up. They actually got into the dog food. They were chewing on the hay that we have up in the barn. They were over by the chickens. I'm not sure what the cat was thinking of. They had wandered over into a sand pile that I have. They were up our driveway. Looks like they had a grand old time. They were even in Karen's onion patch. They didn't seem to eat any onions, but we had hoof prints in part of her garden. Most of our garden, fortunately, is fenced out, or I think we would have lost our garden to a herd of cattle. But anyway, that was our excitement for today, coming home and spoiling the fun of a herd of cattle.